Give me the book that you almost wrote that wasn't this.
So the book that I almost wrote would have been called Step Change. And the reason why is that we are socialized or taught to believe for whatever reason that we should always consider incrementalism first. Well, and before I can open the big lemonade business, I first have to have the lemonade stand. We never consider, why can't I just go all the way to the top?
There isn't a single time I innovate or ideate for business. I always call it, let's shoot for the moon. And if it doesn't go great, we're gonna end up at the top of the mountain, which is a hell of a lot better than being on the top of this house. It's the only way I can think. All right, Vayner Nation, one of the most exciting podcasts that I could possibly put out because of a couple of reasons. One, Matt Higgins is a cult-like figure in the Vayner world because he's been a backer of me for a long time. He used to be the president of the Jets. You just search Matt Higgins, Gary Vaynerchuk. There's plenty of content if you want to go that path, or I'm sure after this, we will go that path. Matt, him individually, outside of the connection point that we have, where Matt and Steve Ross are our partners in the VaynerX world and now Vayner Watts and things of that nature, Matt himself has gotten a lot of heat because he's one of the few humans who's ever been a shark on Shark Tank, and he's done that world. But I've known Matt for a very long time, and this project that he's on now, his new book, because I went through that journey and we have similarities, we have differences, but I know that part. But I also know the tireless efforts and work ethic and passion and giving a shit. And he's a little more meticulous than I am. So probably every word on this page and I know the cover journey, like this man put more effort into this cover than I put into VaynerMedia. And so I think this should be a great interview for a lot of reasons, most of all because I love him, so that my subconscious energy is going to deliver. Two, I know that this audience buys books like crazy, which is why all sorts of fancy people who otherwise wouldn't want to talk to me are always asking to be on the podcast because the numbers don't lie and all the PR people know that. So I'm excited about that because that means a lot of people are about to get this book and check it out. And honestly, you know, I always say this, the books that I always co-sign, I've never read because I can't read books. I don't have that capacity or capability.
Can you make this the inaugural book?
Nope.
Okay, cool.
Am I going to go on a vacation? The only time I can is when I go on like vacation and but I always go by the person. Do I believe in the person? And do I think the person mailed it in because they just want it, or they went there? I know you went there. And so it's really nice to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. Amazing. I know. And by the way, I know you won't, because when I said, do you want to see the excerpt about yourself? You said no.
Yeah, even Dust, think about this.
I was like, but I'm writing some like intimate stuff. Yes. You're like, no, I'm cool.
I'm like, I trust you.
Yeah.
Matt, tell everybody what the book's about.
Okay.
Let's go there first.
Yeah.
And then we'll go
into its most simple version. It's all about why do we hesitate? I've been obsessed with this topic generally. I've dealt with anxiety and all the issues that people have been listening to have dealt with. But when I went on the set of Shark Tank, and here I am a grown man, right? And, you know, arguably deserve to be there. And right before I went on, the night before, I had a complete meltdown.
Really?
Freaked out. Like,
I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, no, I'd rather let the tape do the talking. But the reality is, the tape doesn't reflect what really happened.
You had imposter syndrome. You weren't sure how you would pop on TV. You didn't want to be like bad at it.
Well, it was like one of those moments. Like, why am I bothering? First of all, it's really uncomfortable. It's full of risk. You can underperform. Of course, these things didn't really materialize, right? Yeah. We tend to amplify these risks.
Yeah, of course.
But the night before, I had been up for 2 days. I'm in the hotel room, and my wife Sarah, it's 5 a.m. She's like, okay, baby, are you ready to do it? I was like, I haven't slept.
Wow.
It got so bad that I said, honey, I have an idea. I'm going to tell them I had bad salmon in the hotel. Rohan Oza lives nearby. I'm going to call Rohan and get him to fill in for me.
You really thought that?
I really thought that. You know, embarrassing to admit it, but she's like, take a shower, pull yourself together. I went in the shower.
Listen, because I actually want this podcast to bring a ton of value. Yeah. And I think I'm going to go somewhere that I think has a chance to really bring value.
By the way, I wasn't sure I was going to bring this up. Now I'm like, should I mention that? But go ahead.
You were a real business person in a big organization with lots of things going on. Was it more about what it was going to do to your real life business than you were going to be like not good on TV?
It was all of that. It
was a mix of both.
It was the haters that were going to receive it pretty negatively.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Right. It was the pressure to perform well.
On that one, let's break that one down because I think that's going to help a lot of people as well that listen to this. Was it people like in your, not like your direct business friends, but those tier 2, tier 3, or was it the masses who, you were less known than maybe some of the other people? And was it more about the masses saying like, why this guy out of anybody? Or was it like that tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 circle of people that you interact in business with like 2 times a year, 6 times a year on a deal, saying like, why you, not me kind of thing?
Exactly. It was not the masses. I could care less.
Right.
And
That's
I know,
blind.
right. And I love that. I'd rather be underestimated. It was about the ones who might have direct effect in the outer orbit, who would say, who are inherently resentful, right? So it's like, it was all that. Also, why are you taking your eye off the ball? What are you doing here?
Right.
The feeling. Also, you're a kid from Queens, and you
Those
haven't proved yourself. All this kind of stuff. So, but interestingly enough, so I'm in the shower and I'm having this reflective moment. And for those who don't know, I dropped out of high school when I was 16, and I ended up becoming the mayor's press secretary by the time I was 26.
Yeah, we've done this on the podcast before and other content. Really, like, because I want to stay within the book lane and narrow, because we have it on wax. So please, after this, Google Matt Higgins, Gary Vaynerchuk. You'll find plenty of videos with us.
But like, I had this moment saying, you've been through all this to get to this point. Now you're going to succumb when you're at the precipice, right? So actually, I owe a debt of gratitude to the great poet Eminem, because I decided that I was going to lose yourself on a loop for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I did. I have a video of me in the car. I didn't take it off the entire time until the cameras got rolling. I would say hello, hey Damon, and I kept it on a loop because I was like, that guy. Cool. Exactly. Cool. And then I had a moment in the middle of while we're taping, totally froze, and Mark Cuban, leaned over to me, and you could tell it was kind of look of pity, like who invited this guy, and it all clicked. Like, wait a second. I was like, I've done as many deals as anybody here.
100%.
I've done all this kind of stuff,
100%.
right? And then that little conversation in my head, I do a complete 180. I talk about this in a book. When it's done, Gary, you could appreciate this. I compete for the first deal against Cuban and O'Leary.
Yep.
I win that deal.
Yep.
And Lori Greiner turns to me and she said, Matt, in the history of Shark Tank, no one has come on and walked on the set like they were there from the first day.
That's awesome.
And when I tell this story, because everybody out there, if you saw the tape, you'd say, oh, he's a natural. I'm not a natural. I want you to know I'm not a natural.
Yep.
And you don't need to be a natural, but you do need to overcome that voice in your head.
Yeah, makes sense.
And that's what the book is about.
And what else is the book about? Like, for cool, makes sense. I actually love the way you act. I love the concept of hesitation, because that is you selling yourself in the other direction. What about the title?
So the title. So Burn the Boats.
Yes.
From the beginning of recorded history, anytime you have a military leader and they are outnumbered, 10-1, and they need to do the impossible, they always use the same language, same concepts in different languages, right? Of this idea that to get the most out of you, you need to eliminate your escape route and also eliminate your food. So it's in the Art of War. It says, burn the boats and the cooking pots.
Yep.
It goes back to the ancient Israelites. It goes back to Caesar crossing the Rubicon.
Yep.
It goes back to a very bad man, Cortez, but he used the same concept, usually attributed to him. This notion that humans perform best when they have no plan B. You've heard this before, but a lot of people don't believe it. When I wanted this statement to be provocative so that 25% of the audience would say, yeah, that's easy to say, but I have mouths to feed, or I have bills to pay.
Well, that's all it is.
Right.
I mean, I would argue that the predominant framework of my content that I put into the world only is responded with stuff like that.
Exactly.
Easy for you, or this and that.
100%, right.
There's a framework of excuse, and I always say to the people I most care about, if we go into a deeper conversation about it, is if anyone has ever done it in your circumstance, then this argument is over. If anyone with an alcoholic father has ever succeeded in happiness and business success, well then this argument is over.
I love that you say that, because one of the problems, you could relate to this. Now I'm perceived as a guy on Shark Tank. I'm perceived at the end of the journey, not the beginning of the journey.
Correct.
This book is my attempt to rewind. Let me take you back to that shoebox apartment in Queens, New York, when I am literally eating government cheese, sleeping on a mattress, taking care of my mother. Let me take you to the moment that I had cancer, or that I got divorced, right? All these different moments that you could say, all right, I don't want that. Also, I could relate to that.
Sure.
And so the point being, I am the most paranoid risk taker you're ever going to, this, Gary, right? Like, so
this is like a really fun podcast because I actually know.
I know. And so burn the boats is not burn the boats with you on it. It's the point of the book is that you should process risk by all means. You need to process risk at the beginning of the journey and say, what's the worst that could possibly happen? Once you've processed risk and synthesized it, then you can go forth fearlessly. My paranoia, as you know, is front loaded.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But then I go.
Yeah, I like that. When don't you go? I was actually going to just jump into that. You're right. It's all the upfront. And then, once the ink is signed, well then, right?
We're going.
But I notice, and this is not how you roll, that a lot of people get joy in filling the void, or it's their way where they aren't good at that. That even after the deal, you shook on it, you signed it, you started it, you opened the store, that they go into dwell city quickly, often. A month later, we shouldn't have done this. And all the energy goes into we shouldn't have done this because it was a bad 30 days instead of all that energy you need to make the next 30 days awesome. Is that touched on? What do you think about that?
That is more the point of the book.
Interesting.
That actually what I'm trying to demonstrate, and there's a lot of academia in the book to prove the point, that the mere contemplation of a plan B or whatever, or your escape route, dramatically reduces the probability you'll be successful. 100%. So there's an incredible story out of Wharton, not to get all sciencey, but from 2014, where they wanted to prove that idea, and they had two groups of students going ahead and undertaking an exercise, and all they had to do was think about another way to achieve the result, and they were able to demonstrate a material reduction in not only the likelihood that they would achieve it, but the desire to actually achieve it. So that's why military, think about it, makes sense. You're about to die, and they harness this idea that you have no escape route. So the boat,
because if you can run away from dying, that seems really fun.
Right, that'd be great.
If you don't want that to happen, once you realize you can't do that, the only way to do it is to kill everyone else.
Right. So the boats, in my case, is not really your escape route. It's the things that recur in your life, internally and externally, that make you revisit whether you should have.
Did you? It's funny. Did you? One thing my publisher struggles with me is I want to make books that aren't timeless. Yeah, like one of my favorite books is Jab, 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 Right Hook. It was the current state of social media content that worked then. The next book I'm going to write is Jab, 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 Left Hook, because I want to update it, because green screen and TikTok didn't exist when I wrote that. And they always make fun of me, and they always say, look, Crush It did so well because it's more universal. And like, I remember when you were telling me about this book, I'm like, ooh, this is such a universal, this is a book that did you give that thought? A lot of people who listen to this are more advanced in their careers and thinking about writing a book. Did that even hit your radar, or is this just a book you want to write? Or were you conscious that if this does well, it's doing well 13 years from now because it's a universal message?
No, this is my attempt to engineer an outcome to write something that endures. There's no question.
Yeah, I love
because
that.
I believe in this so passionately.
So that was a starting point, and then you have 13, 15 things, just like Don't Hesitate, that you thought through, and out of all the things that you think are universal, this is what you zeroed in on.
And this is
Was there something that was a close second?
Oh, that's a great question.
Here's a fun question.
Yeah, there was.
Well, yeah, give me the book
that
you almost wrote that wasn't this, because I'm pumped I asked that question.
So the book that I almost wrote would have been called Step Change.
Step Change.
And the reason why is that we are socialized or taught to believe for whatever reason that we should always consider incrementalism first. Well, and before I can open the big lemonade business, I first have to have the lemonade stand. And that is a very corrupting thought. We never consider, why can't I just go all the way to the top? So, but my bias and your bias is, it's how I ended up at Harvard Business School. I could have taught at Queens College. I love everyone at Queens College. But I said, why can't I be the best? What would it take to be the best?
By the way, to your point, there isn't a single time I innovate or ideate for business where I always call it, and you've heard this a million times, listen, let's shoot for the moon. And if it doesn't go great, we're going to end up at the top of the mountain, which is a hell of a lot better than being on the top of this house.
Right.
It's the only way I can think.
Right, and I one of the best, and we'll talk about some
I'm
of
going
these.
to write a new book called Step Change.
Right, let's do it together, actually. Actually, wouldn't it be fun to do a book? You want to do a book with me? Why don't you do a book with me?
I'll do a book
because I'm going to make you read it.
Let's go back to this real quick. What else will people get out of it? What's your gut tell you? And/or tell us an anecdotal story from somebody who's already read it in your inner circles that isn't like someone who blindly is going to say this is remarkable because they love you so much, and actually gave you an insight to what they consumed.
So you got to pick on my vulnerability. That is my paranoia. The people who are telling me they like it are people who know me.
Of course, that's the whole game.
So what are you going to get? You probably feel the same way too. A lot of the business books, some of them are great. I love Atomic Habits, some of the few other ones.
Yep.
But I'd say the majority tend to be really redundant.
Yep.
And they tend to be written as if they're reference books, like they're a textbook.
Yes.
And people are going to refer to them.
Yes.
The reason why we keep buying the same book over and over again is because it doesn't stick.
Right.
I set out to buy a book that was written like a novel. So the best compliment I've gotten is even my own son, who sat there for 5 hours and read it all the way. And he turned to me, he's like, it reads like truth, which was amazing.
That's awesome.
So I worked really hard to write a very readable book. Number two, I did case studies that took a lot of effort. There are 50 different people in this book, from billionaires to NFL coaches to my partner Scarlett Johansson, like all talking about the moment that they had to cross, that barrier and fully commit to their full potential. The number one thing you'll get out of this book is the feeling. Information, great, is the feeling that shit, I can do it.
Yeah, I love
that emotion. And so far, let's just say out of 20 people, no joke, Gary, at least 6 different people have come to me and said, your book gave me the conviction and confidence to make radical change.
I believe it.
It almost makes me pass out. Like, if I could, no, seriously, like, this is my life. Like, it's the most important thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
If I could actually scale that, it makes me like, oh my God.
All right, now let's go into another thing that's going to be universal for this audience.
Yeah.
Selling it.
Yeah. I like that part too.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
How have you been thinking about it? How's it been going? When's the book come out?
Book comes out on February 14th, Valentine's Day. Okay. I pretend there's a logic to that. Give yourself the gift of love. It's because the publisher chose a date. It falls on a Tuesday. Really irritates me. Yeah, but everybody pretend that there's all a reason.
Right.
Yeah. So selling it.
I feel like,
can I tell you why?
Do you know the song "In the Burning Heart" or is that the song? I never know words. In the burning.
That one.
It's Burning Heart, right?
Yeah.
I feel like you should do some sort of piece of social content on the Valentine's Day, the heart burning. I feel like you should.
Will you help me with that?
You should do a shirtless workout video reading the book on Valentine's Day morning with the burning heart in the background.
So how's it going, you're saying?
Yeah, how's it selling going?
Yeah. I didn't think I would enjoy it so much because it's turned me to such bottom feeder behavior. Like, I've lost all dignity, and I love it because I care so much about it, and I've never had a product to sell before. Isn't that crazy? We own all these companies together, and I own Magnolia Bakery, but they've never been mine.
Right, you've never had to sell.
Right, I bleed in this book, and I put things in there that I read. I can't even finish them sometimes.
Right.
I talk about my mother at the end, and I talk about, again, it's not an autobiography,
Yeah.
so I enjoy it. Plus, so much engineering went into it. To your point, there were over 400 iterations of that cover. Like,
on the record, I usually just tell somebody on GaryVee's design team, can you design a cover? I look at it, I'm like, approved. Dustin, you know that to be true, right?
No.
Sid would love
No, the public.
Sid! Yeah, let's get Sid in here. Watch this. But this will just be a fun moment in the podcast. Sid, you've been around long enough. What is the normal process of how I do a cover of a book?
Is hundreds of iterations does he do?
I think Gary sees like the second last version of it.
And how quickly do I usually approve it or make changes?
How long you look at it? 10 seconds.
And what usually comes out of my mouth after those 10 seconds?
The longest tagline ever, and very little changes. Probably the last version.
It sounds very similar to my process, only the opposite.
He had 400 iterations of this cover.
Yeah, 411 to be honest, but.
Oh, and I know it to be, by the way, I know it to be true. I got involved somehow I was like, got wired in on a text, and he's like, I need you immediately. And I was like, what is it? He's like,
that's actually true. I A/B tested. I A/B tested.
Like, what do you think of this? I'm like, I don't fuck. I actually put more effort into Matt's cover than I did in all 6 of my fucking books. That is actually true. Thank you, Sid. Go back to work.
Okay, can I tell you why?
Yeah.
4 out of 5 business books are actually still bought at retail. So I looked at this as bottom of the funnel.
I get
right?
it.
So, but real quick on that point, boats generally is a metaphor for whatever it is holding you back, right? And a big premise of the book is the first thing that you start with, the fish rots from the head. What are you carrying around that you haven't dealt with that can make you lighter? And the first thing is to shed your shame.
100%.
So the image on the book looks kind of like a paper boat floating in a bathtub, and to me that represents all the things from childhood that tend to hold us back.
I like that.
And so I talk a lot about my journey to overcome losing my mother, and again, it's not an autobiography. The part I love about the book,
Adam
Gary.
Grant, front cover quote. That's a good one.
Well,
Adam's
let's
people.
talk about engineering
Yeah.
too. So the back of the cover is the quotes on the back is this is a mock-up.
Yep.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yep.
David Solomon, CEO
Yep.
of Goldman Sachs.
Yep.
Jay Shetty, right? Bobby Brown, Mark Cuban, on and on and on. So I worked
huge.
a couple months because most people only have endorsements within their vertical, and I thought
course.
this book is meant to appeal to the masses. So maybe it was a little extra on the cover. I admit that.
No, it's pretty cool. And what
Yeah.
about the selling? What do you think? What have you learned that people can, take from the selling process? What was harder? What was easier? And obviously, it still hasn't come out as of this recording. When do you want me to put this out?
After February 14th, I mean, the
I mean,
day
you know,
of.
you know the pre-sales count towards the first week sales. I know your publisher told you bad
but if you look at business books,
information. Yeah.
people, I want all the impressions to hit when people can see it at a bookstore as well.
Okay,
So it's not everybody buys
so
on.
we'll put it out. We'll put it out. Do you want me to put out the morning of
Yeah,
Valentine's Day?
that would be
Great.
amazing.
Got it.
But in terms of what people would take away too, I try to articulate a lot of abstract concepts that we all deal with, but haven't been able to put your finger on. So for example, I go through the archetypes of bad leaders. One of them is this idea of a withholder that I'm obsessed with. That person in your life, whether they're a manager who refuses to give you praise because they know you feed on it, because they know you're a person who seeks approval, and they use it to destabilize your self-esteem.
Interesting.
And so what's great when you write your own book, you can give names to things that don't exist. Like remember
Right.
sociology in college? Right. So I got to name things, but a lot of things that hold us
Interesting.
back, these external obstacles that I think I do a really good job. And then I use these different case studies to illustrate those
And
points.
what about that little scenario? Because I like that. Like, is the book telling people that they should work on themselves so they don't need validation from others? Or is it telling them, look out for these people while you're in the process of getting stronger?
Well, look, there's no new ideas in the universe,
No.
right? So all I'm trying to do is hold up a mirror and validate that, you know what you suspect you're feeling is true. Your
I see.
partner, your wife, or your
see.
husband is withholding deliberately,
Yes.
your boss is. And two, to the people in power, this especially applies to artists. Artists tends to be the ones who are unable to advocate for themselves, especially financially.
Yes.
And it tends to be the ones who can be
Yep.
destabilized by that treatment. I think when you're dealing with somebody with artistry, you have an obligation to be their advocate as
That's
well.
nice.
So it's a message to management. But I go through these 5 different archetypes. The part I'm proudest of in the book is taking these case studies where people have allowed me to share their very vulnerable, raw stories. And I'd love to talk about one.
Please.
We got a minute?
Please.
There's my partner, Aiden Kehoe.
Yep.
And we have a cybersecurity business together. I
Yep.
acquired his business. You know
Yep.
Aiden, right?
Yep.
Irishman from,
Yep.
He's a bartender.
Yep.
Ends up in all these improbable jobs, insurance broker, then ends up creating a cybersecurity company. We acquired his company. And very quickly I realized that Aiden, because he's got a big heart and was carrying a lot of trauma, would not deal with conflict with employees.
Got it.
And so he was not upgrading his staff. And as soon as we took an outside capital, we would have these conversations saying, look, Aiden, man, like you got to make a move here, you got to make a move there. They're going to eat you alive, right? So it started accumulating. This always compounds, right?
100%.
Same way money compounds, problems compound, right? So over time, started taking a lot of incoming. At the same time, very difficult home situation, a child on the spectrum, just it's coming from every
Stuff.
direction, right? I get a phone call one night from him, and he's crying through the phone, basically saying, "Hey, Matt, like I failed you. I am so sorry. Like I'm out. I'm going to resign." I don't know if you know the story.
No, I don't.
3 years in, I'm going to resign end of the year. And I said, first of all, what's that noise in the background? I hear beeping. And he's like, I'm in the hospital. My daughter is getting tested for seizures. Just everything's falling apart. And I was like, first of all, Aiden, I'm perfectly comfortable calling you when it's over. I was like, it's not over. It's just beginning. You're at the moment of capitulation. I was like, you need to hang up the phone. You need to take care of your child right now. And you call me when you're ready to do the work. A few days later, he calls me. Like you could hear it in his voice. He had contemplated the worst case scenario, total failure, company didn't work, and had let it go.
Yeah.
And the real work began. I'll skip some of the most important details, but he started working with an industrial psychologist that me, love those
Yeah, you love
industrial
this
psychologists.
shit.
I love that shit. So
Matt hasn't met an outside consultant.
that's not true. Psychologists.
No, but actually, this is a strength of yours. This is a weakness of mine. You know me. I'm like the reverse.
No, you're right. You're like,
I'm
get
like
away
in
from my
cocoon-
head. Get out of my head.
I'm in my cocoon.
Yeah.
I can barely speak to AJ and you or anybody. I don't speak to anybody.
Thank God I don't hold you accountable for anything.
I would be dead.
Gary's like, how does your partnership work? It's like, I don't have a vote. But listen how amazing
No,
this
but
is.
it's funny. I think a lot about investors and I think about value add.
Yeah.
Right? And I do think that one of the strengths you have is
Take you as you come. Right?
well, that with me for damn sure. I
Right.
can't speak how you've made
Yeah.
It's
all different,
You're
right?
just like, but it's also like people always ask me like family business questions. They're like, "How do I get my dad? You got your dad." I was like, "Cool, my dad." Who I give my dad Sasha the most credit. He gave me tons of room, but it came because he watched. When I was 15, when you're fucking 15 years old and you look 9, and your father says to you, "There's 50 cases of this thing over here that's not selling," and then he's downstairs like he ran the business from his office. He did all his meetings, and he comes upstairs at like 4 hours later to check on the floor, and like 11 of the cases are gone. You're gonna start building confidence. You know what I think you do well is you watch. You know, you invested. What year did you and Steve invest in?
I feel like it
Vayner?
was 2015.
Right? So like you guys, like you watched, and very quickly you're like, okay, good. Like this guy can do it, and you took your energy. It's what I do with my company.
I think it gives me too much credit, because there were moments when I would also like question, hey Gary, why aren't you talking about yourself as a business person? Remember I give you that little speech?
Yep.
You're always, you're underrepresenting just what a business you have built.
That's
but you're always nice about it. You're like, that's interesting, Matt. Yeah, I'll do more LinkedIn posts. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But it's great.
No, but I think, I really do think of value add, and I do think you as an investor do what I do as an operator, which is you play every scenario different. I've met so many of your investments through the years randomly, sometimes at like things that we're together at, and other times just like at an airport. And, like my experience is different than other people's, and I always laugh. I never say it to them, but we're kind of going transparent here on the thing. They're like, hey, like Matt is, like checks in a lot. I mean, like, and my brain goes to, you need it.
I know.
That's like where my brain went to, because I know that you don't do that with me. Thus, by the way, it's the same thing I do in my company now with divisions and offices, and there's 8 or 9 VaynerX companies, and then there's the Vayner things that are outside, Watt and sports. Like, I only, when you're at the levels that we're playing at, you're putting your finger in the holes that have the issue. Back to boats.
Right. I don't want to get involved.
Lisa Buckley, I'll give her some roses. If she's crushing in LA, I don't know. I don't need to necessarily look at it. I don't have to put my finger in there.
Also, you don't want to, because you're not self-aggrandizing,
but what
right?
I think you do well, that I'm trying to do better, is I go so macro that I'm like, it's all good, but if you can help it better, and in this scenario, it was something that wasn't working as well, but like you're very good at bringing outside energy. It's not just capital. It's like, and it's not just like you tend to match people up.
Yeah.
It's a strength of yours, and that's what you did in that scenario.
And
I wonder if that ties back to this book, which is like, if you're hesitating, what energy? Like, it makes sense that you can't figure it out yourself.
Well, not only that.
Lean on something or someone.
Self-awareness is the greatest single arbitrage, professionally and personally. It's entirely within your control.
100%.
So in a situation like that, and I do this well, I create space for somebody to eliminate their excuse, because I'm sharing all these details, right? Like okay, let me just tell you the Aiden story real quick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, I'll just summarize.
I was excited.
But the bottom line is, he does all this incredible self-work, and he goes through this process with the industrial psychologist. And it's a very uncomfortable process, because somebody's holding up a mirror to you, and they also have a PhD. So they're 95% accurate, and they're things you thought you were concealing. He gets the report, right? Detailing all his issues. And we're in this meeting, and he says, excuse me for a second. He walks out of the room, goes into the room next to it. He's at a staff meeting. He said, here, read this report. You can pass it all around, because you already know everything about me, and I have a lot of work to do. He made a single decision. He was no longer going to work on concealing. He was going to do a 180 and create a culture of total transparency. In probably about 19 months, turned the whole business around and had a massive 9-figure exit, what could have been a zero. And so to me, that story illustrates the power of self-awareness if you just choose to look within. And again, the whole book is not about that, obviously, but it starts there, as you know. But anyway, that's
what else do you want people to know about this book? Or a story in it, or anything? Like, I want to go a little more meat and potatoes, if there's anything.
Yeah, no, what I want you to know is that it would probably be pretty hard for you to look through this book and not see some reflection of what you're going through right now, or somebody that you admire. Particularly, I worked really hard to profile women entrepreneurs, because my background has been populated by strong women. Of
course.
Obviously my mother, but all the mentors I've had in my life. My wife has unlocked my entire success. And so the first entrepreneur you encounter in this book is a woman, and the last one you encounter in this book. And so I'm really proud of the way, and again, not in a lecturing way. More in a celebrating, like the truth. It's the truth. This isn't like, I've always said this. Right? Isn't it funny? It's such a weird.
People talk about D&I or this, and I'm like,
it's just the reality.
Back, remember early in the podcast, I'm like, if anyone looks like you in your situation, and there's unlimited stories of people that are not white men that have built iconic business. Like, it's silly. It's silly talk.
Yeah.
It's silly talk. Matt, to make this very contextual to this audience, using me as a proxy, and will help people, because how many investments have you and Steve done together?
I don't even know.
I know,
honestly.
but like
It's
we're talking about hundreds
of
right?
millions of dollars.
No, that I know.
Yeah.
But hundreds, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so think about this, everyone. I want you to hear this. Let's use me, and then I'm going to use maybe one or two other of your entrepreneurs because I think this may help. Maybe using the framework of the book, maybe not because it's a general podcast. We've established that everybody needs to buy a ton of books.
Please.
If I wasn't me and I'm doing this podcast and I said, I want you to analyze the entrepreneurs that you've backed, what is different about Gary Vaynerchuk's operation style that you think is different than what you see across your investments and what's common? And we're going to play this game with other people besides me, but I want to make it fun for my audience. Okay. If somebody said to you, like, what is the biggest single thing or things that Gary operates in, what currencies, styles, things, like what stands out that's super different? Because I think when we do this with a couple others, it may give some people some themes to lean into their differences. Because I think leaning into the things that make you unique are actually places of confidence to not hedge.
Agreed.
So this is how I'm tying it in.
All right,
what do you think I do? I do plenty of things well and not well like other entrepreneurs. And some of those things that I do well are similar to Jesse and others that you've invested in. But what do you think is uniquely different about how I do things from what you've seen? Because you've seen a lot.
Yeah, let me tell you what popped into my head immediately.
Yep.
2 words: structural integrity. You are constructed with perfect integrity because you are authentic and everything about you there's nothing in conflict inside of yourself. You sleep 8 hours. you have your things that you put out.
Yep.
You have no shame because you have nothing to hide.
Yep.
And as a result, you're able to move effortlessly toward, I mean, I envy it, right? I was like, I wish I could be so self-possessed. And I don't know anyone else who possesses that in the empire, including myself. So that's the number. And I think it's a big reason for your success. We have this conversation all the time. Like, Gary, does this stress you out? You're like, no. I asked you something the other day. You're like, you know what he said to me? I love it. And I talked to my wife about this. It's sometimes talking to you is like taking a warm bath, like Epsom salt. I was neurotic about something, as I often am. And you said, Matt, no, because I'm a good person. And I was like, yeah, can't argue with that. And so structural integrity.
Cool.
And when you have that, you're able to move in one direction.
Let's go into your portfolio because you're going to know better than I do. Give me another person that you can bring up, tell us their business, and tell us what makes her or him their unique thing that's different than the rest.
Oh, I love that. Christina Tosi.
Yes.
Christina Tosi, when you interact with her,
give everybody.
Sorry, guys. Everyone out there, Christina Tosi is the founder of Milk Bar. Right? Great dessert brand and an amazing human being. When you are with her, you know that she is rooting for you to be successful. There isn't an ounce of her that feels like she wins by you losing.
So she's one of my favorite things. She's a big cheering for everyone to build the biggest building they can build, has very little energy to tearing any other building down.
Yeah,
That's
nice.
Cool.
And then again,
even her competitors?
100%.
I understand
and back to the point of like understanding.
That's cool.
And I do have a philosophy, you know this. You take your founders and you take people as they come and you try to amplify their positives and help them mitigate their downsides, but not. And I always say, are you somebody who pokes holes or plugs holes? Do you poke at a hole, poke at a vulnerability, or do you try to plug it? So her skill now, at the same time, she's also a really good person. She's a creative. And so you at the same time wouldn't expect her to be perfectly at ease with conflict. And, in situations where there's potentially a, volatile, toxic person, like you got to help somebody work through those situations. So
I got a good one without naming names.
Okay.
And you might not even want to go too deep into the details because it might expose it.
No, I'm sure I covered the archetypes in the book. So I'm sure.
Yeah. So tell me an example of, through these years of investing, because I think this will be fun for the audience, what was the blind spot for you? I'll give you mine real fast. I came out the gate hot, Facebook, Twitter, you know this. A lot of what we did our fund on was how well my stuff looked. When I look back, I somewhere early on veered away from judging the operator and judging the idea and was making pretend I was going to operate it and could see it succeed if I had operated it. And at that point, I didn't understand how much better of an operator I was than the masses. And I didn't realize how much that was actually the variable, not just the idea. The idea was genuinely always important, but actually a 1B to the operator, because you could kill any good idea. Facebook, Google, Uber, all could have died if the operator wasn't right, and did die before those things. They were built before. No new ideas. Friendster is Facebook. what was yours? If you look back at your first half decade, or even right now, what's the cliche thing that gets you fucked up? As like, you'll make a bet and you're like, fuck, that same theme. And you probably plugged it at this point because you've been deploying real capital for a long time, but what was it?
I was going to use yours, so I won't use yours because you just did
is
that.
it the same?
It is number one,
Wow.
so I'll give you number two.
By the way, everyone should take note of that.
Yeah, it's
That's
a cliche.
in hiring
It's
managers.
it's always the jockey. We tend to reject the cliches because we want to break new ground. There is no ground to break. We've been around
For
a long time.
everybody at home that's not a investor, this is true in hiring too.
Yep.
For everybody who's hiring someone, you know what they would like, you know what they should do, and you just like the person. You haven't figured out if they're capable of doing it.
Right.
So bring that into your
I also
system.
believe, by the way, when you do a search and you land on your number one, and if you can't get your number one, you should abandon the whole search and start over again because those are the best.
There's a reason you didn't like your number two.
Exactly. The best decisions are relative decisions.
like
But I'm
that.
going to do my number two
Go
since
ahead.
you took number
Go
one.
ahead.
Number one is, it is about the jockey. It's a damn cliche, but it's 100% true. And a weak jockey will never be able to, even if they
Ever.
have a great idea,
Ever.
right? But the flip side is true. A great jockey can eclipse a bad idea because they'll iterate through it. But number two is, and I've totally done a pivot on this. Opportunity cost is now my first thought. I always say when I write this check, I'm not investing, I'm getting a new job.
Yeah.
And I have to ask myself 3 years to 5 years from now,
Can
will
I
this
give-
be worth it?
Can I give you a real one?
Yeah, give me.
Outside of our network of, because we had a fund, then we had a gap, and then
Yeah.
we had a fund. I did a personal investment. This reared up the other day. Personal investment, wrote a fairly big check for me in my personal investment realm. Team comes to me, Phil included, and says, hey, you own 17% of this company, and the company's like about to die, but your personal brand can actually help it again. And I said, no. I said, I don't want to run the business. You know how many businesses I run?
Right. I didn't sign up for a rescue mission,
yeah,
right?
and so
Yeah.
that's where, and I'm in a unique spot on top of everything else because I have a platform that can bring awareness, and so
you
that
can
makes
change. You can change the
and
outcome.
but then what am I doing?
Yeah.
Not that I want that investment to fail,
but here's
if
the
the
other point.
opportunity costs are a problem.
But also knowing, so let's take that one step further. Opportunity cost is a problem for anyone, which we don't focus enough on. But it's really a problem for somebody who acts like the Marines. They leave no man or woman behind. Because that means that when you're confronted with a situation like you and I are, I refuse to let things die. So now I pay an even double tax because of my
100%.
behavior. So now I forecast future behavior, at least try to do better and say, one, do I going to care about in 3 years? And
makes
two,
sense.
am I going to die trying to save it and try to avoid
because I
those
know
things.
some of your trials and tribulations. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Opportunity cost is real as fuck.
What's your number three?
I don't tend to play too early. I think the NFT stuff was like that we just did a lot of investing in. I knew that it was Web 96, 97. I think trying to figure out which ones are going to make it through this. Like right now I'm enjoying the VeeFriends thing. I don't know if I've enjoyed something more than what is the meetings I'm having about VeeFriends.
The only thing
right
that
now.
annoys me with this whole thing is I wish you had just told me, like, Matt, do CryptoPunks. Instead, you had me do millions of dollars.
Don't you
and
even be a dick. By the way, he's being a dick, everyone.
Why'd you let me do all these stupid, like...
I can't control you.
That's fair.
You're a maniac.
That's not true.
By the way, do you know how enjoyable it is every 24 or 36 months or so?
but do I
to
not
get a
admit it,
random
though?
well, this is where I'm going. Do you know how enjoyable it is every 24 to 36 months to get a text from you? Can you call me? And I usually think it's important. Matt, he's like, you were right again. Like, you
because I like to hold myself accountable.
You give me roses.
Right.
And I'm, this about me. I tend not to be wrong because I'm petrified of it.
Yeah, you are.
And
You
so I
are
don't do-
actually.
I don't do a
it's
lot
funny.
of
People
stuff.
always say like, "Oh, Gary is like kind of like a gunslinger." I was like, "Are you kidding? He's
They have
way
no
more
idea.
risk averse than I am. You're not paranoid, but you also are more measured. Actually,
I really am. I'm loud and chaotic as a communicator, but to your point, the truth. People would be stunned
Yeah,
if they
like,
looked at the math.
They would think it would be reversed. I'm the guy with the jacket
100%.
on, but you're the one who takes so much.
Only because it's like, I just don't want to be wrong.
You really don't.
I really don't.
Yeah, you're way more competitive than I am. You actually are
Yes.
way more competitive.
think that's right.
I'm actually lost in my head, and I'm actually not competitive with the outside world.
No, you're
anyway.
playing with-
I'm playing with my thoughts. So
We got a few minutes. What didn't we touch on? Oh, actually, we didn't talk about this.
okay.
Did you end up doing the packages?
I did end up doing the
So
context,
everybody, everybody, as many of you know, because you've done this through the years, I've had a lot of success in like, if you buy 100 books of this, you get that. If you buy 1,000 books, of my book, you get that, because I always want my books to do well. I want to get them out there. When Matt called me, he's like, hey, you've been fairly successful in this genre. Like, what's the story? I'm like, hey, I really think the packages, especially you, because I know so many people, I get emails, hey, can I pitch Matt a business for 15 minutes? I'm like, you might be able to do like a buy 50 books and get to pitch a shark. Like, it felt very real to me. So did you end up getting to do packages, or did you not do packages?
So yes and no.
Okay.
I followed your advice, which was brilliant, which was create the packages, and they're amazing, right? And they're wallpaper and eye candy. I didn't find an effective way to try to push them, because the difference between you and I...
Is it still real?
It exists, but
we could do it right now. So where do people go?
I would say the most, go to burntheboatsbook.com.
And you'll be able to find packages on there.
You'll be able to find packages. And
is
probably
it / packages or whatever?
Yeah, they're right. No, just packages. You know what they...
So let's go to that. Burntheboats.com.
Burn the Boats book.
Excuse me.
Definitely don't burn the books.
Burntheboatsbook.com.
Right.
What are the packages? Do you remember?
I would say the ones that are most useful or interesting are Pitch a Shark, because everyone always wants to go ahead and get time. I can't remember.
Okay, so
say it's like,
should I pull it up?
50 books.
No, pull it up while you're talking. Keep talking.
So that one I think is, I get.
So you did do it.
I did do it. And my thinking was, even if I didn't work hard to push those packages, I love checking every box, as you know, right?
Yep.
I don't want to look back and say I didn't burn the boats and run every tactic. But to be honest, Gary, I enjoyed the act of going to my relationships and saying, I've put 47 years of my heart and soul into this. Like, please buy it, because I've never asked you.
Is it under bonuses?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Here's what you ended up doing. 5 books. Invite the VIP Burn the Books webinar.
To the audience, Gary's about to find out that one of those packages involves Gary.
Yeah, I see my picture and I'm like, I'm in it.
Hey, Gary, can you do a package?
What is this, Matt? Did I sign up for this?
Yeah, you're doing like a whole course. Don't worry about it.
Please stop. What is this?
So,
all right, I'm in it. 25 books. Join Matt and Christina Tosi for a virtual baking tutorial.
Very good, right? Pretty cool.
Very cheap.
Yeah.
For her?
Yeah. But go to the Dolphins. Go to the Dolphins one.
Pitch a Shark, live one-on-one Zoom with Matt.
Yeah, that's probably the most valuable,
that's the one
right?
That's going to get the most.
Yep.
That's what's going to happen here. Just
exactly.
Preview, because that's really obviously very real. 150. Take your team through a business case live with Magnolia. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So that's consulting.
That's consulting,
I like it.
Right?
150, cheap. 500 books. The ultimate NFL experience. Join Matt and the piece of shit Miami Dolphins in Miami. Want to live out your football? Matt will host up to 4 guests in a once-in-a-lifetime Tailgate and 72 Club field passes. Or Dolphin fans definitely check this out, because I know what the cost on it. Day of deep sea fishing with Matt.
Because you know how much I love fishing, right? Gary and I have gone fishing outside the Statue of Liberty. Remember that? Matt's
Big Apple Daydream. 1,000 books. Join Matt for an afternoon and evening adventure in New York, starting with a helicopter ride over.
I was going to build that to you, by the way. The
helicopter. Wait, I'm in this too.
Yeah,
including a Hudson Yards for me with Gary.
Well, it's our helicopter. Yeah, basically my strategy is just to take you.
You literally
leverage you. Yeah.
You took it very literal.
But I was going to wait till it worked.
Do packages like me, not put me in the package.
But then once they were successful, then I would ask you to do it. Burning the boats.
I am dying right now.
Well, everyone, check out burntheboatsbook.com. I think Pitch the Shark is probably the most valuable, because I think in 15 minutes is all I need to change the trajectory of your life, and I feel great about it. I love doing it, and so that's probably the one that I'm most excited about. Well,
listen, everybody, we're gonna wrap up with an actual left hook. One thing I do for my friends is, because I have a bunch of employees, is buy a bunch of books, put them in the hallway. So anybody, who has got a company with 10 or 12 or 19 employees, by the way, I know Matt, he's a sucker, because I'm a sucker, because I'm in every package. I'm sure if you come up with your own package and email them and say, hey, will you talk to the whole company, got 113 employees, I'll buy 113 books. Like, he's trickable, is all I'm trying to tell him. Sure. I'm trying to give my audience value, since you took all the value out of me there. All right, burn the boats. Wait. Yes.
Wait, before you go, because you're here,
yes.
and then all my friends out there in the metaverse will be upset if I didn't ask you. Have gone really deep into the ENS, right? The naming system.
You're huge.
I know, but how everyone's bothering you on Twitter now.
Yes,
I have to bother you on this podcast, whatever.
We blew it. I told you and AJ that over the holidays, hit me up. We'll do 2 hours, and we didn't do it.
I thought you were placating me.
No, instead you hit me up and we did an hour on the book.
That's fair. Oh, so now you
So all the E&S people, just so you know, he sold you out for his own book.
Did you know that that was a misdirection play?
I'm really excited about the E&S thing. I'm just so fucking busy. Back to like, you know, what we talked about.
But you know
camera.
what? I bought for you something. I bought a name for you that I'm waiting for you to receive.
All right, I'm going to make a commitment to get educated here and understand why everyone is as passionate about it. I'm aware that everyone believes this is the big space. I just have not done my own homework. You know, I love to do my own homework.
I agree.
I will. I'll have you and AJ help me. I look forward to that. We'll do that in February after the book launches.
Back to my book plug.
Please buy the book, everyone. burntheboatsbook.com is where you should all go. The book is actually out today because we recorded this in late January and we're publishing it on Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. Matt, I love you.
I love you. Can I have the last word, Gary? Everybody asks me all the time, what's Gary really like? Gary really is like everything you perceive about Gary. That you are the most pure form of a person and you take a lot of heat and a lot of questions. You know, there's all those haters and all this bullshit out there. I'm always in awe of just how much integrity you have.
Thank you, brother.
And I do. I'd love to be around people that I can learn from and make me think how I could be better. You are that person for me.
That's very humbling. Thank you, brother. Love you.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.